Welcome to Red-tastic. Story 1. So I'll keep this brief. My mom and dad have been together for 23 years and have been quite successful. They had me, 20 male, 3 years into their marriage. My mom got diagnosed with cancer and it's been horrible. Well, apparently, my dad didn't find it that bad because it turns out he was cheating with one of their tenants. She has 2 kids and is pregnant with my dad's. When I found out, I was furious and told my mom, which made her condition worse. They proceeded with divorce. It was lengthy and my mom got everything. My dad tried to convince me to let him in their house to get his stuff, but I blocked him and wanted nothing to do with him. My mom evicted my dad's mistress and all was well. Turns out my dad had been paying his girlfriends. They've been skipping house and times have been tough for them. I came home from shopping a few days ago and they were on the front porch. My dad, his girlfriend and her kids were all there. They asked for a place to stay and I told them to get bent. In fairness, the house is large and can fit all of them. Do I care? No. I shoved my dad out of the way when he tried blocking the door and went in, and for the next few minutes they were banging until I threatened them with the police. Well, they were leaving and I was watching them from the top floor and I saw her slip and trip down the stairs. My dad called the ER and they came and took her. And I thought that was that until today when my dad came and yelled at me. He told me she miscarried and they have no money or a place to stay. I told him I don't care and he's dead to me. And I couldn't care less about his girlfriend's kids too. He stormed off and I got a call from my gran calling me a cruel loser and saying I killed my sibling. I just hung up, but my dad's side has been bombarding me and I've been called cruel by a few female friends. I'm just wondering, am I the a-hole and should I help? You're not the a-hole, OP, and you didn't put your dad where he is right now. He put himself there. He's the one who thought it was a good idea to cheat on his wife who was battling cancer and get his mistress pregnant. He's getting the consequences of his actions. He made his bed, he has to lay on it. You also didn't kill your sibling. Your grandma was wrong about that. An accident happened and your dad's mistress fell, not your fault. You don't have to offer any help to them if you don't want to. I would recommend therapy for you to process all this though. You seem to be angry, and while that's to be expected, don't let it consume you. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. None of this was your fault. It's not your fault she tripped. And it's your dad's fault for the position he has put all of them in. And coming back to your cancer-riddled ex-wife that you cheated on for help, that crow must have tasted bitter as hell. He deserves what's happening to him. But I do feel for those 2 kids that got mixed up in a bad situation. Although a call to CPS about homeless kids would solve that quickly. Not the a-hole. It's unfortunate she miscarried, but life is all about choices. The only choice you made was to remove them from your life. They chose to commit adultery. They chose to randomly show up at your home. They chose to attempt to stop you from entering your home. They chose to yell and scream at you, and they chose to leave. It sucks. She fell and miscarried, but none of your choices caused that to happen. You didn't inseminate her or bring her to your porch. Your female friends are probably only hearing the word miscarriage and not considering all of the information. You don't owe him a place to stay or anything at all actually. I am, however, concerned about your degree of hatred. Not for his sake, but for yours. He is still a human, and losing a child is devastating. Regardless of how that child was conceived, you are treating him with contempt instead of indifference. This shows that you still care a great deal. You may want to seek counseling to try and work through your anger. You really don't want this level of hatred fueling the rest of your life. Where does your mom stand in all of this? It is her home, is it not? Story 2. My mother-in-law, 63 female, has been staying over during this pandemic. She can be a little overbearing, but she is a nice person, and it's been fine for the most part. Other people in the house are myself, 32 female, my husband, 33 male, and our kids, 6 female, 4 female, and 3 male. Every day, the younger 2 kids are in bed by 8 and the oldest by 9. My mother-in-law goes to bed around 11. My husband and I usually go to bed past midnight. Well, from 9 to 11, my husband, myself, and sometimes mother-in-law are in the living room watching TV, talking, laughing, etc. Sometimes I go to the bathroom and use the toilet or take a shower. My mother-in-law has been on my case about how I'm disrupting the kids' sleep and how we can't be so loud at night. If it were up to her, we would only be whispering past the kids' bedtime and not flushing the toilet after taking a shit. It's not like we're yelling or listening to music or partying. We're literally just doing normal everyday activities. Also, the kids sleep fine. The thing is, my husband has a history of being overly sensitive about his sleep. I think part of it is that he grew up in a pretty isolated rural area, so he didn't have to deal with street noise or light pollution. But I think my mother-in-law also played a part. She always turned on a white noise machine for him, didn't make any noise past his bedtime, and did whatever she needed to do in complete darkness lest the light coming in through the crack in his bedroom door disturb his sleep. As a result, my husband cannot sleep in hotel rooms or cars or planes or tents or really anywhere other than our own house or his mother's house. He needs a white noise machine or a fan in order to go to sleep. Back before we had kids, we used to live with roommates, and he would always have unreasonable expectations of them with regards to light and noise. Anyway, last night I microwaved a warm compress to use for my cramps. I even took care to stop the microwave before it started beeping, so my mother-in-law wouldn't yell at me. But she had an issue with the noise the microwave makes when opening and closing, and she came over to the kitchen to yell at me about how growing kids need sleep. I ended up telling her that I specifically don't go out of my way to avoid sleep disturbances for my kids because I see how detrimental my husband's sleep sensitivity is to his life, and I don't want them to end up like him. She got upset with me and said, "Why did you marry him then?" My husband isn't upset about my line of thinking. We've talked about his issues before, and he agrees that he is overly sensitive about his sleeping environment and doesn't want the same for our kids. However, he thinks I was the a-hole for telling off his mother like that and making her feel like her parenting isn't enough. Am I the a-hole for being honest with my mother-in-law that I don't want to create the same issues for my children that she created for my husband? Not the a-hole OP. Why does your husband think it's okay for mother-in-law to constantly critique your parenting, but expect you to bite your lip? Why does she feel free reign in your home? What does your husband expect to happen when he's allowing her to stomp all over your boundaries? If your husband doesn't want this kind of escalation to happen, he needs to enforce boundaries before things get to this point, just like you ended up doing. He needs to understand you didn't marry his mother and you were right to shut her down for trying to shove her parenting style down your throat. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. Your husband should be agreeing with you since he's living the results of his mother's incorrect parenting when it comes to sleep. I'm the same due to that, and I hate it. I have to wear industrial-grade earplugs whenever I sleep anywhere with the slightest noise. You were in the right. They're your kids. She has no right to stick her beak in and tell you how to parent. Keep doing as you do and keep repeating to her that it's not how you choose to parent your kids. The sooner she goes home, the better. Not the a-hole, because the mother-in-law should just mind her own business. I'm not really convinced, however, that the husband's sleeping issues are definitely caused by his upbringing. I have tons of friends who are really hectic about their sleeping habits, who don't have parents like this, while I'm pretty lax about my sleeping habits, despite my house always being dead silent at night during my childhood. It may have had some impact, but I don't think someone growing up with a stable, consistent sleeping environment will necessarily make them so pedantic about it. Not the a-hole. She's being overbearing and enforcing her parenting styles on you. She isn't a parent to these kids, you are. If she doesn't like it, she can F off. How is your husband okay with you basically getting into whisper fights with her, but you can't just shut her up once? What you said is valid. It's crazy that he can't sleep in hotel rooms. The beds are so comfy. My boyfriend's mom made one of her old and tired jokes about how we can just have kids and she can take care of them. She literally lives on the other end of the US. I told her no because she's a trash mom. She hasn't bothered me since. Sometimes the swift hammer has to come down for them to really freaking stop. You being nice or brushing it off does nothing to them. Story 3. My husband and I have our own personal savings and checking accounts that we use for our personal purchases, like lunches or dinners out, clothes. Then we have a joint account we both contribute to equally for household expenses, like mortgage, car insurance, and utility bills. We each have a card tied to this joint account that we can use for household repairs or maintenance. We agreed that if we needed to use funds in the joint account for personal purchase, it should only be for an emergency and we would put back everything we took with our next paycheck. Last month, I noticed that my husband has been using the joint account for eating out while he's at work, and he's not putting back what he has spent. I asked him about it, and he told me that his card for his personal checking account was lost, but the bank was sending him a new one, and he would put back everything he used. I agreed and said that was fine, just take what you need. 2 weeks ago, I noticed that money was still going out of the joint account for lunches at work and not being put back into the account. So I confronted him and asked about his replacement card and when he was going to put the money back that he had used. He told me he has the card but just forgot. I told him that was not a good excuse and he needs to put back what he has spent because it wasn't fair. He told me that it was his money too and he can use it how he wants. He said I was being controlling and demanding. I told him that he had 1 week to put the money back into the account or I was going to the bank to remove him, and when bills were due, he could pay me with a check or do a wire transfer into the account because I could no longer trust him. I told him that we both agreed that the joint account was not to be used for personal purchases and that buying lunch for him and his co-workers is a personal expense that should be coming from his personal account. It is now 1 week and he has not put back what he has taken, so I called the bank and removed him from the account and cancelled his card. He just called me up yelling because he went to order pizza and his card was declined. I told him that I said I was going to take him off of the account for not repaying what he took, and I did. He's now saying I have embarrassed him in front of his co-workers and that I'm being financially controlling. He said that since he makes more than I do, he should be able to spend whatever he wants however he wants. I told him that was fine, he just won't have access to the money that I contribute for my smaller paycheck because I would prefer to stand by our original agreement. So am I the a-hole for taking him off of the account? Now for some comments. I would seriously start quietly checking his financial situation and be prepared for a rude shock that might be awaiting you. Don't forewarn him as he'll probably start rushing around trying to hide things, which he might already be doing. If everything is alright, then no worries, but you need to know if there are any problems now before they get worse. Take it from one who has been there. Not the a-hole, and I suspect something more may be going on than just money. How long have you had this particular financial arrangement? Perhaps he doesn't have much in his personal account anymore. Is he willing to share bank statements with you? Could he be attempting to hide the loss of a job, money being spent on an affair or sex services, gambling addiction, who knows? But it really seems like something else is going on and he needs to come clean. Not the a-hole. It was agreed between you that the joint account was for household expenses and that personal spending was separate. It's rather worrying that his reaction to his card being declined was to yell at you for embarrassing him. He had a new card for his personal account by then, and it should not have been a problem to pay for pizza with that card after the first was declined. By taking money from the joint account for personal spending, he was creating a situation where you were effectively paying more towards household expenses, despite being on a lower salary. That's not okay.